I'd like to begin our session by recognizing that where I am in Victoria, we are on the territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. So hello, we have 94 Travel Media Association of Canada media and travel industry members from across Canada registered for today's session. And I'm pleased to tell you that that is a record for us. Today's session is about Indigenous tourism and in British Columbia, and it's hosted by the TMAC BC Yukon chapter, as you heard. And I'm pleased to welcome you on behalf of my fellow members on the BC Yukon chapter Professional Development Committee, Shauna Gardam and Sonia Wong. And thanks to TMAC member Diane Selkirk for suggesting this very important webinar topic. And of course, a heartfelt thank you and welcome to our speakers today. Paula Amos is the Chief Marketing and Development Officer with Indigenous Tourism BC. Welcome, Paula. Candace Campo is the owner and operator of Talaysay Tours. Welcome to you, Candace. And James Cowpar is the owner and operator of Haida Style Expeditions on beautiful Haida Gwaii. I will also be monitoring the chat room as our speakers are presenting to pass questions along, or we can get to you at the end of the session. Thank you all. Welcome. Paula, over to you.
Good morning, and thank you, Katrin, and thank you, Linda, for that warm welcome. I'm really honored to be here and speak to the Travel Media Association of Canada, and from wherever you are in BC or across the country. I am located here at the ITBC office, and we're located in the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories I'm in West Vancouver right now. I am the Chief Marketing and Development Officer with ITBC. I've been working with the organization for about 20 years, so I've watched it grow and change, and I'm really excited to see how it's grown and how travel media is a great ally of us. We love media stories, so we're honored to be here. I am from Squamish Nation on my mom's side, and I am Nuu-chah-nulth from Heshquit on my dad's side. So I grew up on Vancouver Island. I'm from a tiny remote location. You might know it commonly as Hot Springs Cove on the west coast of Vancouver Island. So it's pretty remote. You can only get there by boat or plane. It's a beautiful little location. Right now, there's probably only about 40 people that live there. It's an amazing, beautiful place, but most of the people moved to Port Alberni or Victoria to go to school and to work as well. A little bit more about my background. So I grew up commercial fishing. I fished all over the West Coast, up and down. I was super comfortable in my rubber gears, my rubber gear, my rubber boots, but eventually, there isn't too much glamour in the rubber boots, the rubber gear, fish scales and slime when you're catching thousands of fish per day. But that was back in the good days. So enough about my fishing stories, because I have a lot of really good fishing stories, and I could go on and on. I know one of my favorite locations was to go to Haida Gwaii, and we fished on the west coast, and lots of stories going through the Skidegate Narrows, and it was just the most insane sight, well, amazing sight that I ever did see. But so I've been working with ITBC for about 20 years. And I've watched all of the evolution, how Indigenous tourism has grown. When I first was here, there was maybe about 10 to 15 businesses, and it was a lot of the cultural centers, a lot of the larger accommodation. But it's exciting to see where Indigenous tourism has grown, and there's some really great entrepreneurs. We have two of them, some really amazing storytellers on our call today on the panel, and they're trailblazers, they're storytellers, they're entrepreneurs, and they're leading the path today and into the future. So I'm super excited to be here and to give you a little bit of a snapshot into who Indigenous Tourism BC is. So We have about 150 market-ready businesses that are in all different sectors, from the cultural centers to wildlife viewing, beautiful resorts. You can learn about the cedar tree when you're out with Candace. When I went out on a tour with James, I was very fortunate. We got to go onto the west coast of Haida, and it was just beautiful, like the colors just vibrant. So I'm always amazed, even though I've traveled to a number of places, and I'm fortunate that I've been able to travel to pretty much every corner of the province. Each time I go on these tours, I'm always amazed by the stories that I really get to listen to. So with that, I'll give a little bit more background on BC. BC is one of the most cultural diverse locations in Canada and probably the world. We have over 200 different nations. So wherever you go in the province, you're always going to learn something different. I'm from 2 different nations. We have different language, different cultures, but there's also a lot of commonalities as well. So I think that's what threads us all together, and we have so many connections within our different nations. And with that, I think we'll go to the next slide, and we're going to watch a video that we produced.
Sorry, I just let me know if you can't hear.
Can't hear Dana.
Okay, sorry. It worked yesterday though, right?
It did, yeah. It's
Okay.
a beautiful video even without sound, so not to worry.
Is connected.
We're hearing now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Our actions today are guided by our natural and supernatural worlds, by our ancestors who have gone before us, and by our neighbors and communities. Right now, it's time to heal. And as we begin to emerge, our spirit to be stronger than before, we'll welcome everyone with open arms. For now, we'll pause and take care of our lands. Take care of our communities. Take care of one another, so we can see each other again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. We can send that video out as a link because it does have this is our Everything is Connected video that we produced early during the pandemic. And it was the importance of it was to let visitors know that we're pausing right now, and we'll welcome the visitors later after the pandemic, as we're protecting our treasured elders and youth and our communities. So that was one of the main messages of our Everything is Connected video. So I think right now we're the travel and lifestyle stories that we see now as Indigenous people is really important, especially with reconciliation. I think reconciliation has really opened the door for our stories and gives us space and gives a level of comfort for us to have those conversations about Indigenous people in BC. But I think from the Indigenous tourism angle. I love Indigenous tourism and I love the travel media that comes with it because it really gives us a space where we can educate people, educate the world about who we are in a really positive way rather than some of the more political ways. So there's so many great ways where we can educate visitors, we can inspire visitors through our stories. So with that, I will introduce James. And so James Cowpar is with Haida Style Expeditions. What can I say about Haida? It's on all of our bucket lists. The first time that I went there when I was fishing, I fell in love with it. We mainly fished on the west coast of Haida, and then we came around to the east coast when we were delivering the east coast of Haida when we were delivering fish. But yeah, that was over 30 years ago, and I've been fortunate to return through my work with Indigenous Tourism BC, bringing media out there, and it's always a pleasure to return. So with that, I will introduce James Cowpar.
Greetings, everyone, and I would first like to recognize the host First Nations, of which I'm standing on the grounds of their traditional territory, the Wiwakai Nation, part of the Kwakwaka'wakw people here on beautiful Vancouver Island, otherwise known as Campo River. So the backdrop is a beautiful harbor. Hello for the opportunity. So my Haida name is Skuljet, that means flicker bird. And my English name is James Douglas Cowpar. I'm the Joth Eagle clan. We're a matrilineal society, so our Haida side comes from our mother, and it's also important to recognize our father's side. So there's a Cree behind every tree. And so the Cree, how did they make it to Haida? Well, back in the day when the Haida, our northern brothers and sisters, they didn't want to trade to the Yuts Haida, the Iron people. So the Hudson's Bay Company brought over Cree traders. And so, believe it or not, perhaps that's where our business skills come from. So I'd be remiss not to mention my twin brother. So if you see me in passing and say hi, and for some reason you get a funny look, that would be my identical twin, Sean Cowpar. Thank you. And as you know, until safe to do so, we ask that everybody stay home and love one another and stay in their bubbles. And at this time, we're closed to tourism on Haida. We look forward to sharing our culture and history with you when it's, again, safe to do so. And as Paula mentioned, at this time, our first priority is to protect our elders and to make sure everyone's safe. And we share love from coast to coast, from our coast to as far as our east coast. And we look forward to seeing you again. For those unaware, Haida is quite unique. It's often been referred to as the edge of the world. Historically speaking, our people, we've been on these lands since time immemorial. And at one point, there were over 49 winter villages, 26 being eagle dominant and 23 being raven dominant, not to mention as well the summer villages that were located amongst the seasonal tracks. So the salmon runs, we have summer villages and the gathering places all throughout our islands. Contact-wise, we look to the late 1700s when first contact allegedly was made. However, many of our stories point out that our people traveled far down the coast as far as California and across the Pacific as well. We are ocean-going people. Stewards of these lands from the mountaintop to seafloor, we've all been raised to share our values and more importantly, educate. And that's something that we try to do from our business is bring into those perspectives to share with you. Resiliency is key. And obviously what this pandemic will teach us post is that, we're all in it together, but there's much to learn. And this is what Indigenous tourism does best, is we're here to share our stories, our songs, our culture, explain the art. And so we approach it in a way where we welcome you to our backyard. And that being said, is we wanted to tell you firsthand who we were, where we are today, and more importantly, what we're planning for the future. That's what makes our island so unique. We numbered pre-contact between 15 and 30,000 people. At one point in the early 1900s, we were decimation through smallpox and influenzas and what have you. We were downward around 500 Haida. And so to put that into perspective, around 1905 till now, we're now standing strong in the thousands. That includes Haida, which is our home community, Skidegate, and we got Cow, the Northern Brothers and Sisters of Old Mass. Those are the two main villages that now reside. And so our story is one of survival, but again, our strength, we've persevered. And so that being said, we have our northern Old Masset village and our southern Skidegate and all the other villages that resided across our land all came into, on the south end, we moved into Skidegate. We're West Coast people, Joth clan. So we went from the West Coast moving into Skidegate at one point, low in numbers. And as well in the north end, we had our Haida people move into Old Masset. So in each village alone, we have upwards of many clans. I believe our village of Skidegate, we have over 13 clans alone. And in the north end as well, I believe there's more. And so that gives you a perspective of the different families, the different lineages. Our culture is rich, and as many of you know, and as you can see in the pictures, our artwork, they define our stories. We had frontal poles that explain the lineages. We have crests. So for our clan, we have the 5-fin sea monster. And that is our main crest. And under that, we have our sub crests as well. The flicker, the jing, the beaver. Good and Haida is eagle and Hoya is raven. Again, we're eagle people, and through our potlatch system, our form of governance, reciprocity, and that's something that led to the potlatch ban. During contact times, when the Europeans came in, they saw this and it was so indifferent to them. However, to us, it was our form of building alliances and creating allies and what have you, and trading amongst each other. The coast is really, despite what the books say as the Vikings of the North were often referred to, we were also traders, and we had many alliances with people up and down the coast. I was just in beautiful Alert Bay, Namke's territory. I went to go see a mortuary pole that was raised back in 2010 in honor of Haidas that were coming up from McDolly, which was Victoria, a major trade center. However, in coming up from McDolly, they were sent north during the time of the smallpox epidemic, and many had died on an island close to the community. And so over 100 years passed, the community wanted to honor that. And in doing so, they allowed us to raise a mortuary pole in honor of those lost. And so that just goes to show that in building these alliances, we support one another. As you can see, the beautiful pictures in the background. What is Indigenous tourism? Well, it's incorporating many of these facets mentioned earlier. And so you can just imagine you have beautiful Jaylene up in the top left, me looking at the screen, sharing her songs. A Maori Haida woman, you can just imagine that echo throughout the old growth and in the old village sites when you come to visit. Today, looking back, we've persevered. So our strengths are in numbers and working collectively together. And as I mentioned earlier, stewardship has been an integral part of who we are. And in doing so, we've managed to create and build sustainability, and also learning from, the likes of resource extraction of our past, the logging, the fishing, the mining, to today where we're building a tourism economy that respects the lands and waters. And that's important to us. And in Haida culture, there's an old saying, and when the tide is low, the table is set. And so, at any given day, you'll never starve. And that's something that we like to pass on is, hey, we can teach you these skills, but also we can teach it to you in a respectful manner. We only take what we can eat. And that's important, is not to overharvest, so that future generations can benefit from our resources. So when you look at the genus of the fish, to our toggen, spring salmon, and houston, our crab, our now, which means octopus. Deer were introduced in the late 1800s by the Game Commission. So we call them cud. We have a small Sitka black-tailed deer on island. So when you do come to visit, we ask that you just watch out for the deer. They tend to be like the rabbits in Victoria, from what I hear. There are many in number, however, they taste great. And so people from the sea, the hagu, the halibut, and what have you, with Indigenous tourism, it's harvesting from the lands, again, in a respectful way, and sharing that with you. That's important to us. Today, there's been many developments on Haida Gwaii that are positive for everyone, both Haida, non-Haida alike. And that being said, 53% of our island is now protected, and developments continue where we have conservancies. As you're aware, if not, we have Guayhanas National Park Reserve, Haida Heritage Site. Beautiful, beautiful place if you get the opportunity to come visit. But outside of that, we've developed 12 other conservancies on Haida Gwaii, which now have certain protections. And that being said, future generations will have those benefits we had growing up here on Haida Gwaii, and that's important to us. Some of the pictures you can see down the bottom right, me facing the screen, is an old frontal pole from our village of Joth. And most notably, it's referred to as the mosquito pole in many of the books written about. They refer to Joth as Chattel Island or Chattel Village. But what we like to point out, and that's something that happened back in the 40s, many would come and say, well, where are your totem poles? Well, many were sold off museums. And at one point, you can imagine, with the decimation of our population, many were sent to museums around the world. Specifically speaking for Joth, our village, or Chattel as they refer to it as, there's 8 frontal poles that sit in the Museum of Chicago. So if you're ever there, I'll give you a perspective. However, one still stands tall today, and that's important to point out, whereas many no longer exist. We let things go back to Mother Earth, and that's our culture. And so, we let everything go back to Mother Earth. You can also see Toe Hill, and in the picture you see Windy Bay, and this is something we like to share in one of our Windy Bay Hot Springs Glendelkin Gwaii tours. Is the fight, the stand, or is often referred to as the line in the sand, where 72 of our respected warriors and matriarch, what have you, stood on the line to protect what is now Guayhanas today. And that was from the impacts of logging, and as most coastal places have come to witness. We learned from our past, and so Guayhanas, the agreement, that being said, signed in the early 1990s, led to what is now again Guayhanas National Park Reserve and Haida Heritage Site. The island's also referred Achli Gwaii, we call it in Haida, but it's referred to as Lyle Island. Yet again, a beautiful place. So you can see the blinking eye house there, which it's there to greet you. And in the bottom left, as we're looking, we have the legacy pole. So as I mentioned earlier, raising frontal poles signifies storylines and legacies that are built over time. And the beautiful legacy pole you see there was raised back in late 2013, and that was to honor the relationship of co-management between the Haida Nation and Parks Canada in managing the lands as it continues today. And it's quite unique across Canada, this model, and I believe it's, been used in many other parts as well. There's so much to tell and so many stories to share with you all, and that's what makes Indigenous tourism exciting, is having that opportunity and sharing with one another in a meaningful way. Haida Gwaii is quite unique. Gwaihanas is a quota system, so to let all you know, there are no lineups. We're given a certain quota to go in, and it's managed by each heritage site, which you'll see. We have Puna, Ilnagai, so Ilnagai is village, and otherwise referred to as Skanan's village. We have Tanu, and then we go down to Kiakauga, so Windy Bay, and then we have Skungwai, many of the major villages in Gwaihanas. However, we have the Haida Gwaii Watchmen as stewards, and they manage it, whereas there's only 12 people permitted to each site for any viewing at any given time. So traditionally speaking, I'm on Weokai territory, and so we'd come in canoe, but we'd ask permission to come ashore. And that being said, we'd also do that. We practice that today as one of our customs. And so we'd hail in ahead of time, letting the watchmen know that we're coming to visit, of which we'd then have a tour. Then more importantly, we'd throw the salmon on the barbecue and get lunch all ready for you. You can just cue me, otherwise I'll go on and on here. But no, again, it's a great honor. And just last but not least, we have the top right-hand corner of the village of Skungwai, and that seems to be a popular destination. That being said, it's a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site. And as you can see from the picture, although many changes as we let things go back to Mother Earth are happening, guests have an opportunity to view the beautiful mortuary poles that still stand. And the reason for that was that, as you can see, the cavities in the top of the poles house those held in high esteem, our ancestors. And so they were what would be referred to in non-Haida cultures graves. They're the graves of, and so we let them we'd place our ancestors in the top of the totem so that their spirit would be released. We look forward to seeing you all. Again, we are waiting to get through this, and I want to just send our love out to you all watching today, and we are with you. And again, when safe to do so, we look forward to having you come visit. And I'll leave it for questions, and I will then pass. So Hawa, for the opportunity, thank you.
Thank you, James. Really appreciate you giving us a snapshot and talking about reciprocity and sustainability, which are so important to our communities. And I think it's important that that message that you're sharing it's really about the connection that we have to the land, and our language is always really rooted in the lands that we live in. So thanks, James. And next we have Candace Campo, who is with Talaysay Tours. And each time I go on a tour with Talaysay Tours, I've been fortunate to have Candace as my guide. It's always amazing that I get, and a treat to listen to the guides speak as they talk about the cedar tree, and we get to taste some of the berries that happen to be in Stanley Park when we're in season, when we're on those tours. So with that, I will welcome and introduce Candace Campo.
How skuljet James? E to quickly hot sameta chinsquish, Amos upmessiah, to Swia to Kanata, a Turtle Island, Swia to Comolston. Good morning. My ancestral name is Hatsametsa. I'm a member of the Seashaw people, married into the Squamish Nation. I welcome you all, family, friends who are residing throughout Canada, North America, and our guests here in British Columbia. I currently reside in our home in the village of Comolston amongst the Squamish people, situated in West Vancouver. I'm very fortunate as a Seashaw school teacher anthropologist to participate in tourism. And to be honest, I've been in tourism since 2002, living the life. I was a school teacher for many years, and I would commit my summers to running summer tourism. And as tourism grew as a result of the many partnerships, the growth and development and priority of tourism in British Columbia, and most notably, the commitment of our leaders and our our market organization, Indigenous Tourism BC, our small company, Talaysay Tours, has allowed to grow full-time into tourism. And Talaysay Tours has been offering tours 12 months a year since 2016. We have transitioned from our primary activity, kayaking, which was extended multi-day tours throughout our beautiful inlets here in British Columbia, and now are focused on walking tours. And we offer 3 main tours in Stanley Park, and those tours are nature, history, and art. Our first tour, our most noted tour, is Talking Trees, and it is how our people utilize the forest for food, medicine, technology. This science and understanding of the forest is universal throughout British Columbia amongst the 200 distinct Indigenous tribes. The Salish people alone, there being 8 distinct Salish tribes within the Vancouver region, utilize 133 different plants for food, medicine, and technology. Our other tour is along the seawall, where Talking Trees is within the beautiful groomed trails within Stanley Park. Spoken Trees is along the seawall, giving us the vista view of the cities, where we conclude our tour at the Stanley Park Totem Pole Park. Nonetheless, the tour itself is based on the history of this region, the peoples who have lived here for thousands of years, their early contact and the oral stories of our first contact with the merchant traders, the first stories of explorers, and then later the settlers who moved to Vancouver. Our most recent tour is Talking Totems, and truly that is my absolute passion as an artist and an art historian. We have just opened our new tour, Talking Totems, which highlights the rich diversity of Indigenous peoples throughout the Northwest Coast, as well as highlighting our worldviews, our cultural protocols, and our approaches to doing our art. Over the years, being an Indigenous tour operator has been a journey. There's been lessons learned, and most of all, it's been my absolute joy. But I do want to mention some fun stories in relation to working with social influencers and media people, and just truly express my gratitude. About 10 years ago, Indigenous Tourism BC put a promotion within the New York Times, and the writer Elaine Golsak did an article on Talaysay Tours. And I was so excited. I was telling all my family, my friends, but nonetheless, that article alone 10 years later is still greatly supporting our business. And just to add a little humor, people will track me down everywhere because of that article. They'll go onto my personal Facebook page and they'll say, "Hey, are you the tree lady?" And I can't share enough with the immense gratitude how much business that article in particular has brought our small community, which is so vital to our growth in tourism, but also as I'll say a middle-aged Indigenous woman, I have responsibilities to my community, and through our business, we continuously train Indigenous youth, Indigenous post-secondary students to participate in tourism as cultural ambassadors. We see our partnership with the media as partners, and within our society, there is a very vital role, and traditionally we called that communicator, which would be a modern day media person, a runner. And a runner was the person tasked with carrying the messages for the people. And they would travel great distance over the mountains to the other tribes, up and down the coastline by canoe. And their role was vital to the capacity of that people to build relations with others. Just going to briefly look at my notes and just conclude with these times with COVID. It's been a very sensitive time for our community because it was less than 100 years ago, within the last 250 years that our people have endured epidemics, and as descendants of our ancestors who survived epidemics, we are literally the descendants of the 5% of our people who survived. As a result, our teachings are sacred to us. We have adapted our programs, and Talaysay Tours has so far worked with over 20 different countries providing virtual tours, as well as many universities, community organizations, corporations, and citizens throughout Vancouver, BC, and Canada. We're very grateful to sustain our business because of those virtual tours, and because we also live in Canada, live in Vancouver with access to top medical care. We continue to do very small groups when people are functioning in bubbles like families. We will wear masks and we will go out and we will share small group tours in the forest with our guests. So with that, I just wanted to conclude with the utmost gratitude. Thank you for allowing Talaysay Tours and myself to be a part of our virtual gathering today. Ol Noms Chalap Uk Messiah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Candace, for giving us a glimpse into Talaysay Tours. And I've sat on one of the virtual tours and one of your early ones, and I was still intrigued just listening to the storytelling that you were doing. So amazing job with pivoting and sharing your knowledge. And I think both James and Candace talk about how our rich history, it's a rich living history, and we have such a deep connection to our lands and where we come from. Each of the nations, wherever you travel to, there's always a deep connection to the lands where they're located, whether or not we were, like when we look at some of the trade routes, all of the nations were set up close to a waterway, whether we were on the coast or else we were inland close to the rivers. It was our way, it was our highway of moving around, but we also we had a rich economy back then with our trades. And James had mentioned, he mentioned when the Victoria became the hub for the trade locations, and I think you mentioned called Madali, what you called Victoria back then. Okay, it was
Migdalia was often referred to as
Migdalia. So in Nuchana, okay, I'll listen to it after, but in Nuchanath we call Victoria Matuni. And when you said it, I was like, okay, there's a little bit of a similarity, but because all of Victoria became the hub for the trade routes, and that's where we would travel. And I think that's when our nation started to intermingle, and all of those more connections were made up and down the coast. But it's always interesting to learn about the diversity of our nations. I'm from two rich nations that are different in so many ways, and I get the opportunity to learn from all of the Indigenous tourism businesses and the stories that they get to share. So thank you both for joining this session today with the Travel Media Association of Canada. And we're really honored to be here to be able to share a small glimpse into who Indigenous people are. There's so much to learn. We are an oral culture, so with an oral culture, our way of telling stories was often through our artwork, but we have so many great orators and storytellers that could tell stories for hours and hours, and potlatches were our way of doing our business, whether it was the governance or marriages. So there's a lot of rich history to learn within our communities. And with that, I'll hand it back to Linda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am so inspired. If you wanted to start putting some questions into the chat function, we can pass them on to our esteemed speakers. But maybe I'll start, Paula, by asking you, What do people tell you about an Indigenous tourism experience when they're visiting from other parts of Canada or internationally? How important is it to them to have an authentic Indigenous tourism experience?
It more and more it is important. People are looking for an authentic Indigenous experience. They want to connect more with the local people, the people who were here first. They want to learn about the history. So we're seeing more and more of the visitors that want to get to the deeper story and a deeper connection. And it ties in with people looking for that transformational experience. I know I've been on tours because I've been so fortunate that I get to host media sometimes, and I'm always amazed when we go on different tours and they learn about the connections to the land. We could be on the Fraser River up around Williams Lake, and people are crying at the end of it, and they get very emotional because the connection is so deep. So maybe crying is a gauge how we can say how much people are enjoying the tours.
Gary Curley is asking, where do most of the offshore foreign visitors come from? I see Candace has responded, the UK and Asia.
Yes, I'll just thank you. That's a great question. We're this week I have a group from Switzerland. We have guests from the United Kingdom. And as a result of my post-secondary contacts, I have a lot of international students joining our tour through their tourism programs from the Asian countries as well. So it's a very, very exciting time. And we're looking at methods to reach the general community within those countries to start promoting through social media.
Candace, I know that you mentioned that you're doing some distancing. There are some distance opportunities to take one of your tours now. And James, you have mentioned that Haida is closed to outside visitors because of the global pandemic. So Kim Pemberton is asking Paula, do you know if there are any Indigenous tourism opportunities going on right now through BC?
Some of the businesses have remained open, but many are closed. So if you look on our website and the app, our team here at ITBC works closely with the stakeholders to gauge who's open, who's closed. Have they had to pivot and change their hours, change their tours to still operate during the pandemic? So yes, there are certainly many businesses still open.
Liz Campbell asked the question that many of us would ask, including myself, to both James and Candace. Do you tie food into your experiences for visitors?
I myself am a foodie. I absolutely love to cook for people. I've put away my salmon, but we will serve our Indigenous teas and ask people to bring their own cups. Before we used to provide the cups, reusable cups, but we're just doing small adaptations, but we've stopped our catering. But we also network with the local Indigenous restaurants and caterers when who could provide a boxed Indigenous lunch for our guests when we're working with groups, but our group sizes are much smaller right now. Great question, thank you.
So in our case, very quickly, with any tour, I will bring in the element of harvesting just as an education piece. And so once we vet you that there's no medical conditions and what have you, and we have an EpiPen for each limb in the event that may happen, we'll harvest a hagu, a halibut, or we'll have some salmon on hand and what have you. So we want to bring in those elements, and it's the wild taste of Mother Earth we want you to enjoy. And I'm just to let those on the chat room, I'm trying to get to some questions, but it's a little cold out here, so just bear with my cold tip fingers here.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Glenn was asking about stories related to food, and we do within our communities do have stories related to food, and a lot of the time it's protocols related to showing care and appreciation for the food that is provided to you. And we have stories about the first catch and about respecting the salmon people by returning the bones to the river and to the ocean to show our salmon people that all of the meat was consumed and therefore respected. As a child growing up, I was told, you walk by a berry bush and there's rotting berries on the berry bush, you pick the berries and you let that berry bush know that it's still needed and appreciated. So we'll share.
Thank you. Thank you. That's thank you. I have a question from Jane, and I think it's something that I'm curious about, and I'm sure many of our other members. We're concerned when we talk about respect and the need to travel respectfully and mindfully with Indigenous partners. We don't want to inadvertently disrespect culture or make offense, use inappropriate language inadvertently. We want to travel with open hearts and open minds. So is there any advice that you can offer us or resources that would let visitors educate themselves and follow through respectfully?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. Right now, the best channel to navigate in our web world here would be the Council of the Haida Nation website, of which, again, as I mentioned, we're part of the Guayhanas Tour Operators Association as a Haida-owned and operated company, and we're working diligently to build a collective plan that addresses our concerns. And on the Haida Nation website, there's it's up to date, it's live with respect to the current situation, and as well the contact people, and give us a call. We'd be happy to update as well. So how for that question.
Candace, could I ask you?
Sure. We as our company has applied some protocols to maintain our safety in providing our in-person tours. We're not doing as many in-person tours as we are doing virtual tours. We're primarily booked with virtual tours, but we wear masks when we're in trails. We ask our guests to wear masks and to utilize sanitizer before and after. And we're readily equipped to seize our walking tours if conditions warrant us to stop being in radius and with people in the outdoors. So we're just taking it as it comes, and our guides, who are literally family, and we share expenses by traveling to sites together. You know, one parking, but now our guides do not travel together, and we're just adapting to maintain as much safety practices as possible.
Thank you. Paula, maybe you have something to add?
Sure, I'll add in. So Indigenous Tourism BC, we work closely with DBC. We also work closely with our stakeholders as well. So we make sure that our health and safety is at the top of mind for us. But ITBC has gone along alongside with DBC with the Know Before You Go travel type of information. So we developed the travel responsibly. So on that, it talks about how to look at the communities who are open, who are not open. If you do go, then here's how to travel responsibly. Samantha on our team has put the link in the chat. So that's one of the areas, but we also have other tools on our website where how to work with Indigenous communities, how to when you're in communities, how to be a great visitor, how to be a good visitor. So that was some of the conversations that we were having before COVID hit. In how to be a good visitor. It's when I'm going into other people's communities, it's I'm a visitor in there, and so it's like I'm coming into your house. So I'm going to be on my best behavior when I'm in your house. So.
That's all very, very good advice. Melody, Ren was asking, once travel becomes safe, Candace, will you give tours of your fabulous looking art studio?
Thank you. I'm very
and your wonderful fish art.
Thank you so much. Our art studio is in renovation right now, and we're working with the local artists to promote their work online. And thank you. That's in process, and I'm still managing to do a little art. I just wanted to share too that, you know, humbly but honestly, I really feel we are only an iPhone and a selfie stick away from sharing tours with people throughout the world. And we actually started sharing tours because we had noticed that elderly community members were starting to feel down, feeling shut in. And with the internet connections available to us, we were traveling the inlets and the oceans and the forest trails and just sharing stories. And that's how we got started in virtual tours, is just seeing a need for people to experience nature, stories and culture. And it was probably one of the best things we've ever did as a small business.
Unfortunately, I see that our time is beginning to run out. It's been a fascinating session, and we're so grateful. And on behalf of the members of TMAC, I would like to say thank you to Paula Amos, Candace Campo, and James Cowpar for your stories, for your knowledge and your wisdom. We came to listen and to learn, and we're grateful for all that you have shared with us. And so until we can meet in person and have the opportunity to be runners and tell the stories farther and wider, thank you for being with us virtually. And Katrin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Linda. In conclusion, a big thank you to Linda and her team and the BC Yukon chapter for hosting today's event. And a special thank you, a big TMAC thank you to Indigenous Tourism BC and its partners. A quick shout out and a thank you to the TMAC PD committee. That's Tanya Kidikian, Chris Mitchell, Liz Campbell, and Pat Brennan for all their work. And a thank you to TMAC members for all your support of PDs. We will see you next time. Thank you and be well.
Thank you. Thank you.